you're going to be taxed on it. And even if you put all that $35,000 back into the RSP, eventually someone down the road will have to pay taxes on it. So it's kind of like the FHSA is definitely more tax advantaged. I mean, without a doubt, because you get the same tax deductibility of an RSP, but you get tax free when you pull it out. And, you know, really, if you had two people working on both these accounts at the same time, that would be the ideal scenario. You have $40,000 in the FHSA plus the $35,000, right? So you have $75,000 right there between those two. If you have a spouses doing them together or common law partners, that's like over 100. It's 150 plus the growth in the FHSA. So it's like 150 plus the growth. Now that it's not going to happen overnight. Like, it's going to take time and diligence to get those accounts built up and growing. But I mean, that's a pretty sizable down payment, right? So, but it again does take time and effort to be able to get to that. A very important point that a lot of advisors I talk to actually don't know this. And I mean, I'm not going to consider myself a tax expert by any means, but I mean, this is something that everyone should know about this. So, about deductibility. So, first off, to be deductible in a given calendar year, the contribution for the FHSA has to be made in that calendar year, unlike an RSP. The first 60 days of those, in the first 60 days of the calendar year, you can dump money into an RSP, and then that can count towards the previous year. We all know about the kind of like the RSP season, kind of that window of time. In the beginning, everyone's rushing to put money in. With the FHSA, there's no window of time. As a quick side note, a quick tip here, you could theoretically have somebody put money into their RSP during the first 60 days of a calendar year, claim the deduction to the previous year, and then simply transfer those proceeds over to the FHSA. So you can there's a little way around that where you could, if someone's kind of in that window of time and they're like, oh, I really want to deduct it for the previous year, but I'm in the first 60 days of the next year, dump in their RSP, get the deduction for 2023, say if we're in 2024 hypothetically, right? And we're getting it for the previous year, and then just simply transfer the RSP money to the FHSA. But what a lot of people don't know, and this is so important, is that FHSA and RSP contributions, both of them, when you make that contribution, you get a tax deduction. You do not need to use that tax deduction in the current year or in the first 60 days of the prior year. You don't. You can actually carry that deduction into a future year indefinitely. And so this is such a crucial thing to remember, is that almost everyone who does RSPs, they're in a higher tax bracket, and they're doing a contribution because they're in a higher tax bracket and they want to have a deduction for that year because they want a tax refund, right? Because you're reducing your taxable income and you get a tax refund. The FHSA, however, there'll be a lot of clients that are going to be the prime candidates for this that actually won't be in a higher tax bracket, right? So if they're not in a higher tax bracket and they're getting that tax deduction, it's kind of like what everyone's going to do. This is unfortunately, this is going to happen all the time. I guarantee so many people are just going to take the tax deduction, give it, just file it away. Oh, I got to claim it. I got to claim it because I have it. They claim it and they get basically peanuts for it because they're in like a very low tax bracket because they're like a student or a young professional, whatever. So the key takeaway is that you take that contribution receipt, and if they don't need it, you simply pocket it and you carry it forward indefinitely to a future year where they're going to be in a higher tax bracket, and the bang for the buck is significantly higher because remember, in Canada, we're in a progressive tax system. So the higher tax bracket, the better the bang for the buck when you deduct it from that higher tax bracket. You don't want to deduct it in the first level or two of our tax brackets. You want to be in the higher tax brackets. Usually, I mean, there's no like perfect answer, but I typically tell people like 50,000 or higher in income is typically where you want to be, and then you start using them, and that's where you're going to have a better bang for the buck, right? Also, unlike RSPs, you cannot do a spousal contribution, but I mean, a client can simply give proceeds to a spouse or even a child to contribute to their own FHSA. There's also this will probably not apply to a lot of people, but just as a quick aside thing, there's the attribution rule for spousal RSPs mean that if someone transferred a spousal RSP to an FHSA, the attribution rule is applicable. So any amount that's transferred to an FHSA that's been contributed to the spousal RSP in that year or the previous 2 years would be taxed as income to the spousal RSP contributor, and it would be deemed as a new contribution to the FHSA. So the attribution rule, as a quick refresh, is simply if someone contributes to a spousal RSP, the person who owns that account, if they pull it out within a 3-year time frame, it's taxable to the contributor. They have to wait 3 years before it can be pulled out or moved, in this case, by the person who owns it. Spousal RSPs are not super popular, and there's not I haven't seen a lot of them, and I don't, they're not as popular as they used to be. But anyway, just wanted to kind of throw it out there as a note. Another interesting thing with this product is that the CRA does not allow third-party contributions to the FHSA. So, for example, if someone who owns this account, they're the only ones who own the account, they're the only ones that are allowed to actually make contributions to their own account. But that doesn't mean a client can't simply give money to their spouse or adult children that they in turn can then contribute to their own FHSA. And that leads me to another really important facet and point of the FHSA, is that this product can be one of the most important ways that you can tap intergenerational wealth between different generations of your clients. You may not have a relationship right now with the children of your clients right now, right? Because maybe they're like just graduated high school, or they're just starting college, and there's not really much you can do with them, right? This product would be like such an amazing way that you can talk to your clients, whether they're parents or grandparents, to help them talk to their children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews, and all cousins, aunts, uncles, whatever it might be, and say, hey, we can now offer this to clients that otherwise might not have been in your initial sphere of service, that you're helping that family. So what this product will do is it will greatly, if you're smart about it, it will allow you to greatly increase your sphere of influence with every client that you have. Not every client, but a vast majority of them. So you're gonna really increase the amount of clients that you could potentially have with this product through that intergenerational tapping. Basically, you can go in there and say, hey, you just graduated high school, great, you want to buy a home soon, let's start this account. The parents can then basically give money to that child, and they can just dump it into their FHSA. So it's a really, really good way of tapping that intergenerational wealth. It's an excellent, it's a really easy conversation starter. Now, as mentioned earlier, you can, of course, open more than one account, right? FHSA, just like you can open multiple other registered accounts. You can open as many as you want. But the thing is that it doesn't change the maximum room. You're still bound by the 40,000 maximum room over the course of 15 years. That doesn't change, right? It doesn't mean you magically get more room. It's the exact same with TFSAs. You can't just open, 10 TFSAs and all of a sudden get hundreds of thousands of extra room, right? So the actual participation period is based on when the first account is open. So say, for example, a client opens their first account on October 1st, 2023, and then opens a second account in March 2025. The participation period for both accounts end on the same date, which is 15 years from the date of the first account being opened. Now, a qualifying withdrawal, like I was mentioning earlier, is one that is that is the primary purpose of this policy, is to have a qualifying withdrawal. And again, this has to be somebody who is defined as a first-time home owner. That means that it defines as someone who has not owned a home in which they've lived in the year of withdrawal or in the previous 4 calendar years. And as a reminder, that qualification is the same just to open the account, not just to take it out. So it's quite strict. So just to open the account, you have to be considered a first-time home buyer. And you also have to have a written agreement to buy or build a qualifying home before October 1st of the following year. And you have to intend to occupy that home as a principal residence. And it goes without saying, but I'll say it here, it has to be in Canada. This home has to be in Canada. I've gotten a few questions about someone saying, oh, I'll buy it overseas and that'll be my principal residence. It doesn't work that way. You have to read there is there's a form we're going to talk about in a second, and you have to go through that form, it's a CRA form. It's very clear. I mean, it has to be in Canada, it has to be principal residence. You cannot have owned, your spouse cannot have owned a home or a common law partner, right? It's very clear. When you go through that form, if you have any questions on who qualifies, I would recommend going through that form I'm going to talk about in a second. Because really, if you can go through that form right now and answer yes to everything, you can open the account and you can take it out. If you have any questions about qualification, I would recommend going through the form I'm going to talk about in a second. Okay. But again, the home has to be in Canada and it has to be your principal residence, not a secondary property, not a rental property, not a vacation property, nothing like that, right? It has to be your principal residence. That's the key word here. Now, if you take money out for anything other than your first principal residence purchase, is called a non-qualifying withdrawal. So this means that you're taking money out for anything other than a qualifying first home purchase and is deemed as a non-qualifying withdrawal. All withholding taxes are withheld, of course, just like you would if you take it out for an RSP. Contribution room does not get reinstated, right? So say, for example, a client puts in $18,000 to her FHSA. She has a financial emergency. She has to take everything out, right? So she withdraws everything less any withholding taxes, of course, because the institution holding it would withhold taxes. And then in this case, the client has put in $18,000, took everything out. And so her lifetime room is only $22,000. So $40,000 total minus the $18,000 that she took out, because that was the max. That's how much she put in, and she took everything out. She now only has $22,000 left over. So it doesn't really matter how much or how little you take out. In this example, if she put in $18,000, doesn't matter how much or little she takes out, she still will only have $22,000 for the rest of her life. That's it. There's no way to regain that room. It's just, that's how much you have. And so that's why, if you have an absolute financial emergency, maybe you might use this, but it's the last resort. Honestly, it'd be much better for someone to get their funds from somewhere else. Preferably like a TFSA would be ideal, because not only is it tax-free, but you get the room regained the following year, or a non-registered. The FHSA would be, for a non-qualifying withdrawal, would be, in my opinion, absolute last resort for someone to take money out of this thing, only for an absolute financial emergency. Because again, if they don't use it within 15 years, they can simply shift it to an RSP, right? So there's no taxes on it. So this is the form I was talking about earlier. It's called the RC 725. I definitely encourage you to look this up. You can just find it. It's on the CRA website. Just Google like FHSA withdrawal form, RC 725, and completion of Part A of this form will determine whether whether your client is eligible to open the account and withdraw from this account. It's the same qualifications. Same qualifications. This form is not required for a non-qualifying withdrawal. So if you take it out for a financial emergency, you don't need this form. Just a simple letter of direction or withdrawal form, that'll suffice. But again, that's probably my number one question I get is like, is XYZ situation eligible for this? I've heard every permutation and combination you can think of. So just go through the RC 725. Honestly, go through it just point by point. And if you can say yes and you're eligible, then you're eligible, right? Like that's really what it comes down to. Now, there also is this is something I was talking about earlier. So this is the, if someone wants to put money into the FHSA and basically pull it out immediately, you can do that. Like you can put in $8,000 today and take out $8,000 tomorrow. We're totally cool with that. No problem. We have no problem doing that. And you might have cases like that. Someone's literally like put an offer on a home and they've got accepted and they're going to be taking possession very soon. So they're like, oh, I want to take advantage of it. Why would they do that? Obviously to get the tax deduction. They don't care about the growth. They only do it purely for the tax deduction, right? So which is fine. So they put it in, they could take it out the next day. Just some things to remember on Equitable's processing guidelines. So very important. If you do a transfer from, say, an RSP over to Equitable, that can take 2 or 3 weeks. just to come over to from the relinquishing institution. We have no control over that. And so the withdrawal can't be made until the funds have been received by us. So obviously you have to wait 2, 3, 4 weeks potentially and follow up with that relinquishing institution to have that money come over. It's not instantaneous, right? Most of us know that, right? It takes some time. If you did a one-time pad, like we're basically pulling the money as a one-time pad from the account on the application, this is one-time PAD, there is a 10-day hold on all funds that are pulled from a client's bank account from a one-time pad or a one-time pull, right? That means that you cannot make an immediate withdrawal until 10 business days have passed. And the reason for that is that we need to have a clearance from the bank that the money's actually moved over, because technically we could pull money from a client's account that has like basically nothing in it, right? And we could pull it over. It makes it look like there's like ghost money there, and you pull it out, and in fact, the money's not there. It takes some time for the banks to catch up and like verify the money's there. So for one-time pads, you have to wait 10 days. If you wanted to literally put money in and take it out the next day, your best bet is online banking. So with Equitable, you can always do online banking into our accounts, meaning you can set up a bill pay, right? So you can do a bill pay. You look for Equitable Life Savings Plan as the payee. You put the application number in, you dump in however much you want, set the account out, set up the account. In the next day or two, the account will be set up, funded, and you could pull that money out almost immediately. So online banking is your absolute best bet if you want to take the money out in a very quick period of time. If it doesn't matter and you want to leave it in there for like a few months or years, obviously you can do a one-time pad, no problem. But just as a note, we wanted to make sure you guys are aware of that administrative rule that we have. There's also the ability to add what's called a successor annuitant. So just like a TFSA, you can add a successor annuitant. So it has to be a spouse or common law partner. So in the death of the account holder, the surviving spouse will then become the owner of the FHSA. It doesn't affect the room of the FHSA. It doesn't affect the room of the surviving spouse, right, who's taken that over. And a spouse who's designated as the beneficiary does not have the option of choosing to be, basically the successor annuitant instead. So basically you have to still fill out a form to move that money over to the FHSA. And that new person, the surviving spouse, has to open their own FHSA if they don't have one in order to transfer that money over. There is a special form called the RC 722, which you have to use to move that money over to their new FHSA, the surviving spouse. Beneficiaries and taxation. So this is another interesting one where if the beneficiary of an FHSA is not a spouse or common law partner, it cannot be transferred to a non-spouse beneficiary. So that means it has to be paid out directly to that person. And unlike other registered products, that amount paid to the beneficiary would actually be included in the beneficiary's income. Tax is then withheld by the financial institution, which is interesting because it basically means that there's on the death of the FHSA owner, there's no impact to the estate at all, right? So remember with like RSPs, if someone passes away, the beneficiary actually gets the full amount, and the estate of the person who's passed away has to pay taxes on it. In this account is actually quite unique, where it's actually there's never any tax implications for the person who's passed away. The person who receives it, who's a non-spouse beneficiary, would now have to pay taxes on it. And just like other registered accounts, if there's a marital breakdown, you can transfer the FHSA or a portion of it from one spouse to another, or to an RSP or RIF of the other spouse. And it doesn't affect the FHSA contribution room of the recipient, nor does it reinstate any room for the transferring spouse. Now, for other accounts like RSPs, there's a form called the T2220, which is a CRA form. That's not the form you use here. It's actually a special form the CRA created. Another RSC form. Remember, we were talking about RSC forms here. It's the RC 723. That's the marital breakdown between FHSAs. Probably don't have to memorize that form, but it's the RC 723. Easily you can Google it as well. It's a special CRA form just for marital breakdown on the FHSA. Now, here is what happens after 15 years. If the client is still alive, they've not purchased a new qualifying home, and they've not transferred it to an RSP or a RIF. The account actually becomes deregistered and becomes basically taxable income. Now, what's super cool though is that Equitable has made a very special procedure built into our application and our actual policies of the FHSA, where at the end of 15 years of the participation period, we will automatically transfer the balance of that account to an RSP right before that 15-year ends. So that basically means that it allows the FHSA owner to avoid having an unexpected taxable disposition in case they forget about this account or they don't realize that they're at the end of the 15 years. Now, the thing about that though is if they move it over to the RSP, the qualifying withdrawal is for a new home is no longer available. They would have to use other sources of monies to take that out. They could use the home buyer's plan, for example, from the RSP. Once you move it over though, and that deregistration has happened and it's in the RSP, there's no going back and using, I changed my mind, I want to buy a house now. Unfortunately, at that point, there's no ability to do that. But again, Equitable has built that in where we will automatically convert it to change it into an RSP for you, which is super cool. Now, just to kind of wrap up, I think we all know we're pretty aware of what's going on. I'm not sure where you are in Canada. I'm here in Calgary, but there's you hear all across coast to coast there are a lot of news stories about rapidly rising housing pricing. Where Bank of Canada has their overnight rate of 5%, which hasn't been there for almost 20 years. Outlook is interest rates will stay higher for longer. Rent prices have hit some of their highest levels ever in August, and there's low supply of housing. There's so many more people moving to Canada, which is great to help grow our economy and grow our country. But of course, that means there's more demand, less supply, high prices, high interest rates. It's kind of like a perfect storm of people having a very hard time right now finding the ability to actually purchase a home. So we really feel the FHSA is like, it's not like the be all end all going to solve all of our problems product, but it's definitely going to be an excellent tool in the tool belt of any Canadian that wants to save for a home. And basically, it's a no-brainer. This product is a no-brainer when it comes to using it to help purchase your new home. So just to wrap up, FHSAs. Contributions are tax deductible, right? You have $8,000 per year, maximum carryover of $8,000, so maximum in a given year $16,000. Any contributions that you do make in this account does not affect your RSP room in any way. All investment gains are tax-free. All qualifying withdrawals for your first-time principal residence are tax-free. Much more efficient than a home buyer's plan. Any unused room can be carried forward up to that maximum $8,000. And in the event you don't want to use this account for to buy a home, you can of course then move it over to an RSP. And I get a lot of questions about where can I learn more? And Shannon might talk about this as well. We have tons of resources on Equinet.
I will keep you in mind for the childcare part, and I'd love to just do play dates if you're open to that.
Absolutely.
Yay!
Yeah.
Because I thought too, it's always nice to have
this webinar or watch the module 13. You can get a C credit on that one as well. And we are right now the FHSA is only through Easy Complete seg funds. We do have plans to launch this on our guaranteed interest GIA accounts, but that probably won't be until 2024. So in the meantime, you can of course move monies into the seg fund into something super safe like a money market. And then once we do launch the GIA next year, you can move that money over into the GIA. And there's tons of resources, great tools on Equinet. There's actually a whole under product information, savings retirement product information. There's a whole section just on the FHSA with tons of sales strategies, resources, videos. So definitely check that out. And of course, you always have your regional investment sales managers and your wholesalers in your areas like myself that you can reach out to if you have any more questions. So I want to thank you guys so much for jumping on today, and I'll turn it back over to Shannon.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Wow, that was incredible information. Lots and lots to take in. The questions just keep coming, and you guys rock. It was a lot of...
It's like 1,000 people and high energy. So if you like
a lot of individual situations. I wholesaler. If you've asked a question in the Q&A and I have not had a chance to get to it because I think we had about 500 questions in total come in at once, we will send you an email personally answering your question. If you'd like more information than the answer I was able to provide, please reach out to your wholesaler, your local wholesaler, and ask those questions so we can get you the information that you require. So again, thank you so much, Erin. Thank you everybody for attending today. But before we close out, I just want to go through a couple of things about some of the advantages working with Equitable Life. Beyond the FHSA and the fact that we are the first insurance company to release the FHSA to yourselves and to your clients, we have a number of different opportunities that are happening. One of the big things that we're doing with FHSA is our FHSA contest. So clients who open an FHSA between September 11th and December 31st of this year, 2023, have a chance to win $8,000 towards their 2024 FHSA contribution. The client that wins, that person's advisor also gets to win $2,000 as well. So awesome opportunities here. Get those accounts open this year so we can start that contribution room growing and give your client that opportunity to win our contest. For those clients looking for less risk, because this is a first home savings account. So we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing by the clients. We do have an opportunity with Equitable Life's money market fund. Our money market fund is very similar to a high interest savings account.
It's growing pains, right? You eventually have to stick up for yourself and be able to, other people aren't going to be around. So
exactly.
Kids, school's hard. Kids are mean. Sorry.
And that FHSA under.
I wish I could homeschool my son. Like, the socialization is an important step.
I thought about that too, and that's my thing is they need that social aspect, and if now I see they are kind of some struggle with it a little bit, but I mean it's all new, so I think it's more
for clients to put safe
right now than it is.
Money away, the on the money market, depending on.
Do you do like affirmations and anything to build self-confidence at home?
Have not seen this, or you need more information, please. Basically, once you've done $250,000 worth of business on the investment side with Equitable Life, you qualify for this bonus program. There's still lots of time. It's calendar year, January 1st to December 31st. So it backdates all the way to January 1. This gives you an opportunity just to have that little extra bonus come to you at the beginning of next year. We also, as Erin mentioned, have what's called the Path to Invest. Path to Invest is a self-learning center that gives you up to 15 CE credits, 19 hours worth of training. It starts at the very beginning. So what is the Canadian landscape of the financial institution? And it works its way through, talking about every single account type: tax-free savings account, first home savings account, RSPs, locked-in retirements. It also talks about how to deal with corporations with segregated funds, and it ends with a little bonus on wills, power of attorney, healthcare directive, and how you can incorporate that into your business. Some fantastic information there. If you are looking for the link for Path to Invest, please go to your email that you would have associated with probably this call and just search Path to Invest. An email was sent out so that way you would have access to this site for your personal learning experience. So with that, I think we are all done. So this webcast will stay open for about 15 more minutes, giving you an opportunity to go into and answer the quiz questions and get your certificate for the CE credits. Again, can't stress this enough. Please reach out to your local wholesaler. If you are interested in any trainings for your offices, your wholesaler can help out with that, or one-on-one training if that's what you'd like. Please join us Wednesday, October 25th, where we are having a masterclass webcast featuring Daryl Diamond, Chief Retirement Income Strategist, with a dynamic financials. So we are really looking forward to that presentation as well. Looking forward to having you join us.